Hey everybody, Alan Schaefer at Custom Garden Solutions. So you've been growing your plants from seeds indoors all spring, and now summer's upon us and you're ready to bring them outdoors and put them into the ground and get going. Before you do that, there's one more step that you need to take, and that is to harden off your plants. Let me put this down. All right, so you're probably asking yourself, what's hardening off a plant mean? Hardening off a plant in general is getting your plants that were inside acclimated to the weather outside so that they'll get a healthy start. When your plants are growing inside, the temperature is controlled, the light's controlled, everything's controlled. When you bring them outside, the intensity of the light from the sun is so much more than the lights that you have inside that if you don't slowly acclimate them to the sun, you're going to get something called sun scald. And I did a video on that, but I have a plant that I used. And if you see that right there, up, it's bouncing around. See that little piece of, that's sun scald. And sun scald is something that you don't want because it's going to kill the leaves. If you get enough sun scald, it will kill your plant. You also want to get it acclimated to the wind. You know, the wind's blowing like crazy out here, and just like when you lift weights, you get strong, the plants get strong from getting used to being blown in the wind. And the last thing is the temperature. You need to get them used to, you know, the fluctuation outside in the temperature. So you don't want to bring them outside when you know it's going to be, 30 degrees outside or 40 degrees outside. You want to wait till it's over 50 degrees, hopefully more like 55 to 60 degrees at night. So now that you know you need to harden off your plants, now I'll tell you how you do it. First thing you need to do is you need to check the weather to make sure that when you bring them outside that the weather's going to be okay. Assuming that's fine and the weather's going to be above 50 degrees and there's no hailstorm or damaging winds coming, you can bring them outside. So what I do is I'll bring them over to the west side of my house near sundown, and I'll give it about an hour of sun. And the next day, the sun will come up and it'll go over, and I'll shade them a little bit using a grill or a tarp or something, and I'll give them about 2 hours of sun near sundown. And then the third day, same thing, sun will come over, and they'll get about 3 hours. Your plants are becoming acclimated, even though it's not direct sun when they're in the shade, so don't worry about that. If I know it's going to be 90 degrees outside, and it's going to be blaring sun with a UV index of 10, I'll put them somewhere where they're maybe not directly in the sun, give them a little shade, or give them a half day of sun. So you just want to kind of baby them in or acclimate them to their new climate. You also want them to get a little bit of wind. You want the wind to blow, it'll strengthen their stems and roots. And lastly, you want to get them used to the weather. So you want the weather to be above about 50 degrees for vegetables like tomatoes and peppers and broccoli and cauliflower. So especially those cold hardy crops like broccoli and cauliflower, you want to make sure, especially when they're small, that you're not putting them in the direct heat. You're going to freak them out, think that it's getting hot, and they may bolt really quickly after you put them into the ground. All right, so now you're thinking, hey, I got this down. I got this whole routine down. There's no problem at all. I'm hardening off my plants. You know, the first night you did 1 hour of sun, the second night 2, the third night 3. You sit down after dinner and you watch the weatherman, and the weatherman says, possibility of severe thunderstorms and hail and damaging winds. And you go, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, in most cases, you're going to want to protect your plants. So does that mean bringing them into the garage or the shed or back into the house? That's something you really want to consider because your plants are still very small and very weak. So you'll need to watch the weather and act appropriately. Leave them out as long as you can, and then right before it rains or hails or storms, you bring them inside. Now, I've got about 100 plants, so I've done a couple things, and I'll share those tips with you now. All right, so it sounds easy to harden off plants, but if you have to bring them indoors and outdoors because of the rain, it becomes kind of a pain in the neck. If you've got 100 or 150 plants, it's really a pain in the neck. Trust me, it's one of the things I really despise doing. So a couple things. One is, in the video I did on growing peppers from seeds, you saw that I use these trays and I water my plants. So here's a plant here. holes drilled here, and I water from the bottom. So I'll carry my plants out using these trays. And then when I water, I'll water just like I did indoors. Be aware that when you water, you're going to need to water a lot more outside because the sun will be beating on the trays and the wind will be blowing, the temperature will be up possibly. So using the trays is a great way to carry them around, but it's also a great way to water. Secondly, as I mentioned, I could have anywhere from 100, 150, 200 plants depending on customers' needs. And what I did is I built probably about a 10 by 10 little cage out of PVC. It's like a little house. And what I'll do is I'll put it in my garden. My garden is covered by a 2-foot fence. So the PVC cage will go in the garden, and the first day I'll give it an hour sun, and then I'll throw a tarp over it, and I'll clip on the tarp so the wind doesn't blow it away. And then the second hour, 2 hours, and I'll harden it off that way. Then if the rain comes, the tarp will keep, rain or hail, the tarp will keep the plant safe from getting pounded by rain or hail. And then when it's done, I can pull it off. So that's a great way to do it, so I don't have to be taking, 10 trays in and out every time it rains or every time I need something moved. So you might have some type of structure. You could put it under a picnic table and then put a tarp over it and put some bricks around. There's all kinds of things you can do. I've had all kinds of contraptions with tarps so that I don't have to bring my plants inside or into the shed or into the garage all the time. One other thing that you need to be concerned about when you watch the weather and they say there's some severe weather coming and you go, oh, I'll just bring it inside. Well, you need to be careful with that. I'm very paranoid about this because right now I've got other plants growing inside. And I don't want to bring the plants that have been outside for 7 to 10 days now inside and infect my inside plants with spider mites or aphids or something else that's going to harm my plants. So before you bring your plants inside, just think about that and maybe come up with a different alternative. And now I have an animal kingdom tip for you. So, you haven't been growing all year and you forgot one thing, that the critters like to eat your veggies. So I put them on a table or I'll put them in my garden in that little PVC cage I talked to you about. And my garden has a 2.5-foot fence, 2-foot fence. So the rabbits, the squirrels, they'll eat your plant, man. So don't forget that when you're hardening off your plants. Protect them from the animal kingdom. Otherwise, you're going to wake up one morning and you're going to be really, really disturbed. All right, so now you know how to harden off plants. Hey, you learned something today. If you got more than, 10 plants and you get some severe weather, you really want to follow some of the tips I gave you and make sure that you kind of have a plan on how you're going to harden off your plants. So I'm Alan Schaefer with Custom Garden Solutions. Our channel is all about helping you grow herbs and vegetables so that you can live a healthy and happy life. And if you're new to the channel and you want to learn all about growing herbs and vegetables and all kinds of cool garden stuff, start today by subscribing. And after you're subscribed, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything, because you never know where I'm going to show up next.